hot staging test article, mysterious structure at Sanchez, hot staging ring, concrete ripped up at the LLam, and did I mention hot staging? RGV Aerial Photography presents Starbase Flyover Update Episode 13. Welcome back to another episode of Starbase Flyover Update. My name is Mauricio and today we'll be doing a flyover over Starbase, Texas. Hope you enjoy this flight. We'll begin this week's tour of Starbase at the former Massey's gun shop and range. For a quick overview, here's a map layout of the areas of interest at Massey's test site. Comparing the first flyover taken last week on Wednesday, August 9th. Now sliding over to the image taken 1 week later on Wednesday, August 16th to compare the changes. We first take a look at the booster cryogenic testing station where the booster quick disconnect has been installed this past week. This bundle of pipes will be connected to the QD port of future boosters being cryogenically verified for flight. They run down the BQD framework all the way along the piping framework to these horizontal liquid oxygen and liquid nitrogen storage tanks. This will lighten the load on the workers, who previously had to manually connect the cryo pipes to B10's QD port during its cryogenic test campaign last month. Underneath that, we see that the booster and ship puck shuckers, both of which now double as transport stands, have no major changes observed in either of them this week, as the booster puck shucker nears completion. Now moving down and to the right, earthwork has begun in this coned off area. This can be to compact the soil before foundations are built, similar to the launch site back in 2018. However, a more likely but boring explanation is that it will be used as a soil storage area. Further down, the large concrete footings of the currently unknown building were covered with earthwork following rebar installation and concrete pouring last week. Surrounding it are various trenches meant for laying wiring and conduit seen here. We've heard some interesting speculation as to the purpose of this area, ranging from hosting the tracking stations or the new location of the mid-bay. More on that later. Next, we move past the two halves of the structural test cage still awaiting lifting onto the S24.2 article still in the ring yard. We now arrive at the hot staging test article with the can crusher's hat still on top, which pulls down on B11's old load head and S26.1 aft skirt with the hot staging ring in the middle. This is in order to simulate and exceed vertical thrust loads the hot staging ring will experience while it's wedged in between the booster and the ship. At least 2 confirmed crush tests have happened with the hot staging test article where the hat seen on top is pulled down by these straps, which are connected to pistons, better seen in the zoomed in ground shot taken on August 12. But top-down compressive loads aren't the only forces tested on the can crusher. Thanks to ring watchers for noticing these 4 diagonal straps and pistons running from top to bottom in this ground photo. Check out their Twitter thread for more information. We also noticed this week that test article S26.1 had left its previous position by the can crusher. So where is it? Moving up all the way to the top of Massey's, the now irrelevant test article has been staged next to the burst pad, which was previously involved in FTS testing of B6. Just like B6, we can expect S26.1 to be getting scrapped soon, but probably in a less violent manner. And that wraps up this week's tour of Massey's. On to Sanchez. Next up is Sanchez, as seen in this labeled map. Comparing the first flyover taken last week on Wednesday, August 9th. Now sliding over to the second photo taken on Wednesday, August 16th to compare the changes. We start off in Sanchez by looking at the progress on the ground fabrication building. At the entrance to the pizza oven door, we can see concrete has been poured in the prepared area from last week. The area just to the right of this newly poured slab will be next in line, and there are no signs of external sheeting being attached. Just across the west driveway to Sanchez, we see a good bit of progress has been made on the new ring structures, and there's more being built as well. Looking at the layout of the parts just to the right of each stand being built, it appears a duplicate may be under construction. We can see in the lower right there are plenty of pieces remaining. These are beefy structures, with currently speculation being that they may be used as booster stands in the mega base to assist with engine installation. To the right side of the image, we can see the circular structure that was spotted last week with cross bracing that resembled the load spreader. That piece has received the skin over the top, possibly indicating it could be used as a platform or floor. Could it be used as a platform to lift engines or shielding underneath the boosters with the new stands? Just above where the stands are being built, in the area previously occupied by Megabay 2 prefab structures, we see several ring stands from the build set have made their way over to storage. This may be because extra space was needed in the ring yard for the LR11000 extension components. Taking a closer look up the new tank being constructed, we can see it has gained a top. This isn't the final height of this tank to be certain. Much like the building of grain silos, crews will likely build this tank from the top down, jacking up the structure as they add up each ring section. The tents previously set up around the base of Booster 10 have now been removed and SPMTs have taken their place, indications of an upcoming move. The tents were likely used temporarily to assist with shielding installed under the booster's aft section in preparation for engines. I was on site to catch the move of the booster as it headed back to Mega Bay 1, likely to receive its full complement of 33 Raptor 2 engines. Over on the engine installation stand, we see Ship 28 at the ready. The partitions constructed around the base of the stand may be acting as windbreaks for crews working underneath. The day after our flyover, I was at Starbase with my cameras and was able to catch crews moving fresh batch of engines over to the ship for installation. Right behind Ship 28 is the nearly flight-ready Ship 25. If we take a closer look at the locations of the now removed lifting hooks up top, we can see they've been covered over and tow installation has begun. This means that SpaceX no longer expects any crane lifts of S-25 to happen in the future, as the chopsticks responsible for stacking the ship onto the booster do not lift with lifting hooks. The rest of the vehicles seen here are Booster 11, Booster 4, Ship 26, and Ship 20. Just behind the ships in the garden, we can see trenches have been cut in the concrete and surrounding areas. This likely for plumbing to pressurize the vehicles for rigidity, ensuring the safety of workers working inside. And that's it for Sanchez. Moving on to the build site. Next up is a build site, where various vehicles have been moved around this week. Feel free to zoom in and explore this labeled map of various production facilities at the site, and thanks to Procky for creating this. Here we have a shot comparing the first flyover of the build site from August 9th. Now sliding over to show another few seconds to the photo from August 16th to compare the changes. Starting at the top, we can see two new forward flaps have arrived. One is sitting on the flap stand while the other is in the foreground. Also, we can see what seems to be Ship 29's right aft flap sitting on the ground by the mini bakery. The other flap for Ship 29 is currently sitting outside the high bay waiting installation, which occurred on Friday morning. Moving left over to Mega Bay 2, we can see construction still seems to be at a standstill as crews continue to work on the extension of SpaceX LR11000 crane. We now arrive at the actual LR11000 crane, which appears to be coming back to life after receiving its extended lifting jib pieces to extend its boom. It was fully raised later in the day. This longer boom now enables the lifting of roof sections onto Mega Bay 2, some of which can be seen over here. Also, they're not visible in our flyover images, but later in the day the new 150-ton capacity bridge crane beams were offloaded in front of the bay for later installation. Another thing we can expect to see lifted into Mega Bay 2 are these 10 pre-assembled staircase sections. Now moving on to Mega Bay 1, where we can't really see much from this aerial shot, so let's switch over to this ground shot taken on Thursday the 17th, where we see Booster 10 sitting on the right of Mega Bay 1, after its rollout early in the day to receive its 33 Raptor engines. But those of you paying attention know that B10 isn't alone. Indeed, Booster 9 is hiding on the left, sporting its brand new hot staging ring. Here's a zoomed in and dehazed shot of the ring, edited by Oscar from our Discord server. Although this specific ring wasn't tested before, its companion of the same design has been tested at Massey's test site. Although it seems quite thin at first glance, we are relieved to see this image of the reinforced underside of the hot staging ring dome posted by SpaceX, which features a large number of stringers supporting the dome. As seen in this other photo posted by SpaceX, the dome within the hot staging ring appears to be plateau on top, with the exception of this guy sitting on top. The 3 center Raptor engines of the ship will have to gimbal like crazy to avoid hitting this flat surface. Once the engines have gimbaled, there will be little to no clearance between the engine bells and the hot staging ring dome, as seen in this render by Coda. How does SpaceX plan to solve this? At first, we thought this highly gimbaled Raptor test fire that took place the same day the new hot staging ring was lifted on the 17th held the answer. Unfortunately, Elon Musk debunked that theory when he confirmed this 15-degree gimbal deflection angle was to test the landing burn, not stage separation. Igniting the 3 Raptor vacuum engines only won't work either, due to the TWR of the ship being less than the booster without the center sea level engines. How does SpaceX plan to solve this problem? And will hot staging even work? Let us know what you think in the comment section. Before moving on to the high bay, it's worth mentioning that the 2 halves of Booster 12 are still hiding on both left and right corners with no visible work done since last month. As promised, we have the high bay, where one of Ship 29's aft flaps was spotted outside. Although S-29 itself cannot be seen, we can see Ship 30 on the left. This vehicle completed stacking just 2 days after the flyover, when it was stacked onto its aft section on Friday, August 18th. Neither can live while other survives. Indeed, as Ship 30 was topped out, tent number 2 was demolished to make way for the Star Factory, with tent 1 not that far behind with its lights already dark. Us Starbase watchers know that nothing is permanent. These tents were first completed in mid-2020 near the start of this channel. Now they will be torn down for bigger and better things. Of course, I'm referring to the Star Factory. Once completed, the Star Factory will stand at around 720,000 square feet, completely taking over the rows of all 3 tents. Rotating over to this image taken last week, let's see how it looked. Now comparing it to how it looks this week, let's go over these changes in detail. The already existing part of Star Factory currently being used for sleeving operations is now being connected to its Phase 2 expansion. Better seen in this other angle, the erection of horizontal and vertical roofing framework further west means we can expect these 2 phases to be connected and operational much sooner than we expected. Now back at this angle, we see that the roofing framework and panels have been installed to the right all the way to the edge of the Star Factory's POW cap. Further down, the last concrete POW cap was poured in this location and a rather large piece of steel intended for the roof has been staged here. And since we've received some questions about this piece of land that SpaceX currently does not own, court records currently show they may end up going to a jury trial in December, although it seems to me like SpaceX is happy to build around this plot for now. On the left, we see miscellaneous items being cleared out of tents 1 and 2 ahead of their demolition. Tent 3 has also seen some activity, where we see Ship 31's nose cone outside, its forward dome in the middle, and its common dome staged at the bottom. It may be a while yet since Tent 3, which is responsible for nose cone production, will be demolished, and Star Factory currently lacks the proper height to produce nose cones. Next, let's take a look at this often forgotten corner of Starbase, host to the Starlink facility and now the Ship 22 and E-Dome assembly. What is believed to be a mock-up of Crew Starship's interior was moved from its previous location in the mid-bay next to the Starlink facility, which coincidentally has the only known clean room at Starbase. Zooming in, an access ladder has been rolled to the door of the crew mock-up, and a generator possibly used for an AC unit has also been hooked up. This excellent render by the space engineer shows a hypothetical design of a crewed starship, complete with a cargo bay reminiscent of the space shuttle. Our last stop is at the mid-bay, responsible for making various test articles. After S-22 was rolled out back on August 12th, the S-24.2 test article was also moved out. What we believe to be Ship 30's aft section seen in the mid-bay was also moved out of the high bay for stacking. Now that the mid-bay is completely empty, the question remains, is it getting scrapped? And what will take its place? As the cycle of life and death continues to play itself out at Starbase, make sure you subscribe for up-to-date news and analysis, and like this video so that it can reach a larger audience. Now onto launch site. The launch site is at the far end of Highway 4 where it meets the Gulf of Mexico. Here's a quick look at the overall layout of the launch site using this labeled map. Here we have a shot comparing the first flyover of the launch site from August 9th. Now sliding over to show another few seconds of the photo from August 16th to compare the changes. Starting off at the suborbital pad side of the launch facility, we see not a whole lot has changed since last week. Ship 28 could be the next occupant of Pad B at the bottom once its full complement of engines are installed. We may not see this until after the next integrated flight test. However, over on the dirt pad that has been used as equipment laydown area, it appears a pretty big cleanup effort is underway. Since last week, the red E-duct casings, concrete culverts, and other miscellaneous parts have been hauled away since they are no longer needed. It may be that they're trying to transform this pad into a more permanent fixture with concrete soon. but we won't know for sure until we see more evidence in future flyovers. Shifting back up to the north side of Highway 4, we see progress has been made at the tank farm expansion area. All but one pier on the bottom row has now been filled with concrete to support the future tank cradles, while those on the top row are almost finished being formed and their embeds installed. With concrete trucks spotted moving in and out of the launch site since the flyover, I wouldn't be surprised to see these completed by next week. Overall, the former suborbital landing pad and main entryway to the launch site appears mostly launch ready with equipment showing few and far between. Moving just to the east over to the orbital tank farm, it appears very little has changed since last week. The fourth LOX pump shown last week remains disconnected from the distribution system. A few cryo tankers are on site offloading liquid nitrogen or liquid oxygen. At last, we arrive at the orbital launch pad to round up today's video. Before we focus on the LLam, let's take a look up at the deflector plate water storage area. The high-pressure gas manifolds we identified on the ground last week have now been placed vertically in front of the newest high-pressure tanks for plumbing. Over on the opposite end, we can see the third large tank that was lifted last week just after our last flyover. If you look closely, you can see the tank is currently offset compared to the other two, likely to allow for crews to cut and weld the necessary flanges on the bottom of the tank for connection to a discharge pipe. Scaffolding erected around the tanks is being used to fit the rest of the necessary hardware for integration into the setup. Just beneath the tank, we can also see the concrete slab that was poured right after our flyover last week beneath the raised discharge pipes. Now we move down to the LLam, where we can see scaffolding erected not only on the top near the BQD, but also inside the ring on top of the LLam work platform. Crews have been busy working on the booster hold-down clamps and QD assembly since the last static fire. This clip, captured by LabPodger's Rover 2 camera at the launch site, caught a test of the Raptor QD assemblies on August 12th. Later that night, more tests were conducted, a total of 4 as seen in HoopCam. The leading theory currently for why 4 of the 33 Raptor engines shut down prematurely seems to be ground equipment rather than the engines themselves. Perhaps the QDs for the outer 20 engines weren't supplying an equal amount of pressure to all the engines for proper startup. Let us know what you think in the comment section. If we look just below the top of the LLam at the east-facing staircase, we can see crews have shielded both sides to the top where the stairs meet the opening to the inner walkway. All that remains to be done is the attachment of the roof panel to protect the stairs from ferocious super heavy exhaust plume on liftoff. This piece was lifted after the flyover and crews welded it into place. So if you remember in last week's episode, the big surprise we discovered was signs of cracking in the Fondak just off the deflector plate. Taking a close look this week at the south side of the LLam, we can no longer see the paint that was used to mark the cracks. It's not clear if crews repaired the cracks already, but we can see signs of material being replaced next to the other partially shielded staircase. What about the other side of the LLam though? If we swing over to the north side of the LLam, we can see some interesting work has been going on where the Fondak was placed. Interestingly, we didn't identify any troubled areas marked out on this location last week, but it appears more work is being done on this side than the other. Many excavators were spotted being used to chisel away at the Fondak early in the week. We can see 2 large areas where material has been excavated. Are these the only locations that will be fixed, or will they report the entire area? We'll keep an eye on it. Do you remember how we mentioned crews would likely remove the other cryo station used for ships on the last flyover? Remove it they did. We can now see both pads have been cleared of the cryo equipment and more space is available for use. To wrap up the video today, we can see the crews have finally begun forming and pouring the necessary border wall and runoff gutter to direct water and other contaminants to the new retention pond. This was initially spotted a few weeks ago, but crews had only completed a short section near the pond. Zooming in and moving down the scope of work, we can see the wood forms and rebar in place for concrete work to be finalized. This setup should alleviate runoff from the surrounding pad area during the rain, static fire, or launch events. While the deflector plate system does throw a significant amount of water beyond the pad perimeter initially, it's quickly tamed by the fury of the Raptor engines, which turns the immense discharge into a cloud of steam and mist. When the system is primed and following firing activities, the deluge does continue to run for a period of time at a reduced capacity, so this water should be caught and directed to the pond. We'll cap this video off with another test of the flame deflector plate, and I was on site to capture it on the evening of August 18th. After crews worked the entire afternoon to clean the pad and steel plate assembly, we saw our first test of the system after sunset. While we're not 100% certain of the reason for this test, it's possible crews have finished the plumbing for the extra high pressure gas tanks and wanted to ensure the pressurization setup was properly working. While I was on site earlier in the day, I spotted a flange that will be welded to the underside of the newest tank, so it was clear the tank was not used in this test. What did you think of the test? Another may be coming sooner than you think, with 3 potential 12-hour road closures scheduled for Monday, August 21st through Wednesday, August 23rd. Will we see another Booster 9 static fire? Let us know in the comment section. And that's it for Starbase Flyover Update Episode 13. Thank you for choosing to fly with RGV Aerial Photography. If you like what you saw today, please consider subscribing so you don't miss out on the new videos each week. And also leave a thumbs up. Also, please consider supporting our flyovers through Patreon to gain access to our flyover gallery the same day it occurs. Finally, join our public Discord server to discuss Starship and space in general with like-minded fans around the world. Link is in the description down below. This is Mauricio and that's all for now.